What is good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our Vulkan debugger. So I think I explained this in the previous video that it's not really required, but you kind of really do need it, especially if you just don't know what you're doing. You probably just want to have a debugger in there. Otherwise, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot and you won't never know where you went wrong. So a debugger is just one of those crucial things in Vulkan whereby it will actually help you catch all of your mistakes and help you fix things whenever they are broken, right? Yeah, this is what we're going to set up in today's video. We're going to set up the debugger. So yeah, in the previous video, I believe we set up our instance, our Vulkan instance, and we just temporarily placed this variable up here, but unfortunately this is not where it's going to live. In fact, we're going to need to create a struct to hold all of our frequently used variables when it comes to Vulkan. So what I'm going to do right now is in the Vulkan folder, I'm not sure if I need to restructure this folder, but then I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. So what I'll just do here is I'll just add in a new file called Vulkan defines or something. This will hold all of our Vulkan defines and all our custom Vulkan structs and all of that stuff, right? So I'm just going to do a pragma once up here, and then in here we're going to define a struct. So type def struct, and I'm going to call this Vulkan context. Okay, so this struct will be used to store most of our Vulkan related stuff. Yeah, so in here, this is where we're going to put that VK instance. Okay, so up here I would like to do an include, and then I'm just going to do Vulkan / Vulkan.h, and then once I have that, unfortunately, okay, well, we can do VK instance. So let's do VK instance, and then let's do instance like this. So VK instance. So this will be our Vulkan instance, and then because we're now moving forward and we're going to build a debugger, so what are we going to do is we're also going to create a variable for the debugger in there as well. So let me just go down here and see, where is it again, and what was it called? Oh yeah, right here. So VK debugger, this is what we're going to do as well. So we're going to put this in here. This will be a variable stored in the Vulkan context. Okay, and then I'm noticing that my syntax highlighting is sort of broken. So let me just close this file. Let me try and build my engine again, and then try and run it. Let's just see if we broke anything, and everything still works. So I'm just gonna clear up my console here, clear up this guy, and then go back in here and just hope that it comes back. I guess not yet. I guess I have to include it in some weird other file, so let's just include that in the Vulkan renderer because this is where we're going to use it. So let's do include, let's do Vulkan defines.h, and then we can get rid of this VK instance. So when I save this, probably you might see an error down here, which is fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a static global variable called Vulkan context, and then I'm just going to make this a pointer, and I'm going to call this context. Okay, this is where our Vulkan instance lives, right? It lives inside this context, and we're going to need to initialize this context when we create the instance, because the instance essentially, if you think about it, is the first thing that we do when we basically set up our Vulkan renderer, right? We create the instance first. So I'm just going to also set the context in this function as well. You don't have to. Maybe you'll have another function whereby you want to set that up, but for now I'm just going to set it up in here because I do know that creating the instance is the first thing I ever do when it comes to Vulkan. So yeah, so then I'm going to do context equals to malloc. I'm going to need to include a stdlib so that I can make use of malloc, and then in here we're just going to do a size of the Vulkan context, and then that should be fine. That should just initialize this and create memory for it. Okay, And then once we have that, we have our context. So then down here where it says instance, all you just do is just put context in front of it and then access the instance in this way. And then I'm just gonna run both my project, and then up here I'm just gonna run my app, see if everything still works, and it seems like everything is still working. So yeah, okay, we don't have any errors in our console, so everything is still working. The only difference now is the instance is now stored in the context. All right, so now that we've organized that out a little bit, it's time to then do a little bit more work. And we said that we wanted to set up the debugger. So what will we need? We'll need a function to set up the debugger, but actually before that we actually need to do some stuff first. Let's see, use validation layers. Oh yeah, so we need to create an array to store some validation layers, and then we need to do this to basically detect whether to basically enable validation layers, right? So when we are in debug builds, we enable validation layers, and then when we in release builds, we disable validation layers. So we're gonna use the same technique here. What just happened? Oh, okay, it just took me to the spec page. Okay, that's fine. Then we're gonna check validation layer support, and then we're gonna check if the layer that we want is within. You see, this is why I don't like C++. We have weird stuff like const auto, like it's just weird, man. Like I just don't like C++. But luckily we're not using C++, so I'm gonna have to convert all of this into C. I'm just looking what I need just to remind myself. And then once we have that, we need to, okay. All right, then we set up the debug callback. All right, fair enough. So let's come in here and let's see, what do I want to do? I guess we can start off with the debug stuff, right? Enabling validation layers and this array situation. So right beneath the context, I'm going to do another static, and then this one's going to be a const char, and then it's going to be an array that basically stores the required validation layers. Okay, and I'm going to say validation layer names. Okay, this will be the string of names, like here, as you guys can see, they have vk chronos validation. So for us, we're going to make use of our own dynamic array situation, so we can't just simply, you know, allocate it like this. So I'm gonna just declare it, and then right below that we are then going to also create a static, and then this one's going to be a vk, I think it was vk layer properties, and then this one will be a pointer, which will also be an array of available validation layers. Okay, this one will just hold a list of available validation layers that are supported by our system. Okay, and then this one will just hold the layers that we want to activate from this list. Okay, yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm going to use this guy, so I might as well just copy this, paste it in here. So therefore, if we have debug defined, then this will be validation true, so this should be true. And then if we don't have debug defined, this should be false. Okay, then I'm just gonna offset this a little bit like so. Just, well, I guess I can't do that. Oh yeah, it's my formatter that's actually formatting that. Okay, it's fine. So once we have this, we're gonna need another. No, this is actually fine. And yeah, I think, sorry, I think that's it for now. Then I'm gonna need to do check validation layer support. All right, so what I'm gonna do for that is I'm gonna create our very own custom functions for those. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create 2 new functions, and those are gonna live at the top. Do I want to do them in this file though? tisk. Well, we're only using them when we're creating the instance, so I don't want them to clutter up this file. So I guess I'll just have to create like a file where we're gonna hold like custom functions that wrap around Vulkan, maybe like util functions or something like that. So in Vulkan here, we're just gonna do Vulkan -utils.h, and then probably that will need a Vulkan utils.c. Okay, so then in here we're just going to do a pragma once. Okay, and then in here we're going to have two helper functions. Okay, one is going to get all the available validation layers for us. Okay, so what I'm going to do is static, and just quickly go back to renderer.c. Then we're going to need this vk layer property, so back into this one. So it's going to return a list of vk properties. This will be the list of Vulkan -get all available validation layers. So it'll just return a list of all available validation layers that are supported on our machine. And then, oh, it's gonna cry now. I guess we can do include Vulkan, because we're actually gonna need our Vulkan defined. So let's do Vulkan defines.h. and that has the Vulkan header in that as well, so it's fine. And then actually I shouldn't be opening this up in here, so I'm just gonna save this. Then we're gonna have another, well, this shouldn't be static, sorry about that. And then we should have another function called boolean, and then this one should give, well, let me just type it out first. So required validation layers. So this boolean should just tell us if required validation layers are available or not. Okay, because if, for instance, we activate this layer, right, and then when we query for all available validation layers from the machine, and the machine doesn't give a list that includes vk layer chronos validation, then obviously that layer is not available on our machine, and thus this function will return false. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna use this function to check if indeed this is actually supported from our machine, from this list that we're gonna obtain from Vulkan. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And then I guess we can pass in some values in here. What will I need though? Actually, I won't need anything, hopefully not. And then here I might need the list that I'm checking against and the layers that I'm checking for. So what I'll do then is just pass in a const char list of names. So these will be the list of all the required layer names, which in our case will be this list. Okay, we're gonna pass this list to that function. So back into utils, so we're gonna pass that list here, and then we're gonna pass in another list which we're going to obtain from this function. So that will be vk layer properties. So paste this here, make sure it's a pointer, and then we're just gonna call this supported layers. So we're gonna pass in the list of supported layers and the required layers that we want to check if they're indeed supported or not. Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna copy these, then we're gonna go to vulkanutils.c, then we're gonna paste this in here. Then I am going to just do an include up here, which just includes vulkanutils.h, like so. And then I'm just gonna open this bad boy and this one as well. And then in here, let me just return null real quick. Return null, and then just return true. I just want to include this in here, so hashtag include Vulkan utils.h, and then it's gonna cry about something. File not found. Oh, it needs to be in quotes, like so, and then that should be fine. Then I'm just gonna bolt my project to see if I messed up, and then everything still seems fine. And I'm gonna just run it just to check if I didn't break anything, which is perfectly fine. So then in the utility.h, in fact, I'm just gonna close this. That's fine. Then I'm gonna go back to utils.c, and then in here, this is where we're just gonna fill out these functions real quick. So what we want to do is we want to obtain a list of all of available validation layers, right? So we're gonna need a u32 to hold the count. Okay, and then we're just gonna call vk enumerate, enumerate instance layer properties, like so. Then we're going to pass in count to populate that, and then we're gonna pass in 0 for now. And then u32, I guess we'll have to include my defines.h file. So that should just be defines.h. Now I'm not sure if I recorded a video of me actually moving the defines.h outside of my platform layer, because it was inside the platform layer, the defines.h, but then I removed it, and then I made sure that it's in the source directory, so it's over here in the source directory. So I'm not sure if I made a video of me making that change, but if not, then do be advised that I actually did move the defines.h into the source folder, and I moved it out of the platform.h folder, and then I just refactored all the other files that are making references to this to include it in this sense. Okay, and that just gives us our u32s and all our custom data types there. So yeah, moving on, we then need to basically get the layers. So vk layers, layer properties, and then we need a list to store this in. So I guess we can just, because we're going to return this out, so I'm going to call this out layers because we're going to return that list, and then I'm going to say it's equals to, I'm going to create a new list. Oh, then we're going to need to include our custom array. So let's do containers / array. So then we're going to say array create. Then what I want to create an array that can store vk layer properties. Okay, but I don't just want to create an array though, because this is going to give us a default capacity of 1, and when we add, it's just going to double the size and so forth and so forth. So we might end up with a size that is bigger than what we actually need. So to save space and just allocate memory for just about the exact number of layers, what I'm going to do is, since we already have the count, right, by simply calling this line of code, this will give us the number of layers that our machine currently supports. So that could be maybe 6, 8, 10, I don't know. And then we're going to take that number of layers that we currently support, and then we're just going to create an array of that size. So I'm going to say array reserve. So we're going to reserve space for the number of layers our system currently supports. So if this is 6, then we're just going to create an array that can hold 6 elements exactly. Okay, that way all 6 elements will fit in there without us having to resize or create an array that's bigger than what we need. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And then all I'm going to do is say vk, I'm going to call this function again. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, and this time around, instead of passing in 0 here, we're passing in the list that we want to store those layers to. So in that case, it's just called out layers like this. and then I save that. Okay, and then I basically just want to because Vulkan, the way that it populates this list, it basically modifies the memory directly, right? Because normally what we would do is to add something to the list would be like array dash push. Okay, then we'll say out layers, and then we'll push whatever layer that we want to push to that list. And then if we want to push another one, we'll just do another array.push, and then this function inside basically updates the count, right? The number of elements that we have in the list. Okay, but now when I'm calling this line here, Vulkan takes this block of memory, this array, and then directly just adds all of those elements to it, and then it basically jumps, and it doesn't call my array the functions that we define in the array to basically update the number of counts, right? So yeah. Yeah, I'm the worst explainer. I'm just realizing that, but who cares, right? So yeah, it just doesn't call the other functions that are inside of our array to essentially update the count every time it adds a new element to it. It just adds all of them and doesn't take into account the number of elements it just added. So to account for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually update the count and be like, okay, array set count to for this out layers, we're going to set the count to the number of elements that we have added to that. So that way our array is now aware that how many elements Vulkan actually populated the array with. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And in fact, you know what, let me just put comments. So let's just do reserve space for the VK layer properties. All right, okay, so this is what we're doing here. Okay, and then here what we're doing essentially is just populating that list. So populate the array with available layers. Okay, hopefully the comments are much better than my explanation. Yeah, I'm not really a talkative person, but anyway, and then manually set the count. Okay, like so. So hopefully now it makes sense for you guys. Okay, and then finally all we do is just return the array. So instead of us returning null here, we just return the out layers. So the layers like so, and I'll just put a comment, return the array directly. Okay, yeah, sweet. So hopefully this makes sense. So I'm just gonna get rid of all the space in here, condense this out a little bit, and then that's perfectly fine. So to illustrate what we just built here, so let's just go back into runtime, and then let's go to the Vulkan render.c, and just up here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do like a VK layer properties, and then this will just hold the layer of properties that we have, right? Actually no, we have the array here, so I can just simply do available. So just say available layers is equals to get Vulkan get all available validation layers, like so. Okay, and then that should give us a list of all available layers, and to traverse through that, all we can do is just create a for loop and then be like int I equals to 0, and then I less than, oh yeah, we're gonna need the count, so let's just do array get count of available validation layers, and then we simply just do I plus plus, and then I think we can just debug. So let's just do info, and then we can say let's do s to print out a string, and then we can just pass in the validation layer that we want to print out. So available validation layers, I dot layer name, like so. So layer like this, and then maybe put like a decimal number here, like so, and then here we just put I, like so, and then hopefully this should work. So if I save and I rebuild and then I run, then we should see a list of all the available validation layers right here. So we have starting from 0 all the way to 5. So to offset that, that makes it 6. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we currently support 6 validation layers, and here they are. And out of the 6, what we want to activate is this one. So I'm just going to copy this name, and just above here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say required validation layer names is equals to array create, then we're going to create a list of const char. Okay, then I'm just going to say array push, then I'm going to say required validation layer names, and then what I'm going to push to this will be this, like so. Okay, so what we're doing there essentially is this, right? So we populating the array with this layer, just like they do in the tutorial. Okay, so now that we have this populated, what I want to do then is get the layers. Okay, we are getting the layers that are available. So now we're going to check from this list if indeed this guy is part of the list. Okay, and if it is part of the list, then we know that this layer is indeed supported on the machine, and then we can move forward and do whatever it is that we want to do with that information. Okay, so that means we have to go back to the utils and then pull out this function to check if indeed that layer is supported or not. So what I'm going to do, hopefully this one is simple. So I'm just going to do a for loop here. Then I'm going to do I equals to 0, and then I'm going to do I is less than array get count of we're going to do the count of required layer names. So we're going to check using that count. So let's do required layer names. Okay, in this case it's 1, so it's just going to call this loop once. This loop is just going to run once, and then we're going to do I plus plus, and then okay, so inside what I want to do is I want to have a boolean. I think they did it this way as well. Where is that? Yeah, here it is, bool layer found, and then they just update that, so it's fine. So layer, so if found, we're going to set found is false initially, then we're going to have another loop inside this loop, then we're going to call this int j equals to 0, and then I'm going to say j less than array get count of this list supported layers, and then I'm simply going to do j plus plus, and then we're going to do a string compare. So I might need to do include string.h. They also use string compare, so I'm just going to use that. Yeah, so I'm going to say if string c, is it string cmp? Yeah, string cmp, then layer name. Okay, so what we're going to do is say required layer names at I, or, well, is it I or j? At I, yeah, it's going to be at I. And then we're going to compare that name with the supported layers at j, right? Yeah, j, okay. It should be like this. And then simply what we're going to do is compare it to the layer name, okay? And then we're going to check if this is equals to true, okay? And then if it is true, then we're simply going to say found is equals to true. And then all we then do is just say linfo. We'll just log to the console. So let's just say linfo. Why am I not getting? Oh, it's not included. So let's do include core/logger. That will include logger system. So then we say linfo. Then we can just alert and notify ourselves that yes, validation, found validation layer, the specific one in this case being a string, and then that layer is going to be required layer names at I. Okay, and then probably just want to break out of this loop because we did find it. And then outside of this loop, all we do is if not found. So if we didn't find anything, we just log an error message here. Well, shouldn't really. Oh, yeah. I'll just make it an error. Yeah, I'll just make it an error message, and then be like required validation layer. The specific layer, and I'm just going to encapsulate this in single quotation mark, and say is missing. Okay, and then I'm just going to say required layer names at I, like so. Okay, and then we're going to return false because this needs to return a boolean. So since it was not found, we just return false. Otherwise, it was found, and thus we return true. Okay, makes sense? So that is our function right there. Let me just read through it and see if I didn't mess anything up. I guess we'll see when I run it, right? Okay, so let's go back into the renderer.c. And then in the renderer.c, we've already set up. Okay, I've already set up the stuff that we need. So all we need to then do now is right after this, right, context stuff, we're gonna check, okay, is valley. You know what? Just give me a moment. I want to close my window because there is some noise coming in that I don't like. Sorry about that. I am back. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna say validation validation layers. What did I call this? Yeah, I just copy pasted this from the website. I don't want to name it like that, so let's do validation layers enabled, right? Validation layers enabled to true. Then just make sure we rename this one as well, so that here we can just say if validation layers enabled, right? That makes much sense, right? Yeah, that is actually more readable in a sense. So yeah, so if validation layers are enabled, indeed, what I want to do is this that I did up here. So I'm just going to take this because I only want to set this if we have the validation layers enabled. Okay, then now that we have that, then we also want to set this only if the validation layers are indeed enabled. So then now I can just delete this at the top. Okay, and now that we know we are getting this list, I guess it's safe to delete it, but I'll just comment it out for now, in case we want to do some debugging later. Yeah, and then I think this is it, right? We only want to do it once this is actually enabled. And to make sure that your VS Code is highlighting which mode you're in, quickly go down to your CPP properties and then just make sure you have this defined there, okay? And then that should make sure that you are, well, VS Code will take it as if you are in debug mode, okay? And then it will sort of highlight your code based on that. defines there, which also leads me to my make file. We actually need to add that to indicate that yes, we are building in debug mode. So up here I'm just gonna do engine defines, and then here's what I'm gonna put on my engine defines. So I'm gonna do d like this, debug. So debug. Okay, the D is just convention thing, I guess, and then the debug is the let me just show you real quick, is this name right here. We're defining it when we're compiling. So yeah, so just make sure, or if you didn't know about that. And then I'm not using this anywhere, so I want to use this when I compile. So I'm going to do $, open brackets, and then I'm just going to do engine defines like so. And then when we build the engine, it will build in debug mode, and then once we in debug mode, it will indicate that validation layers are enabled. And then once the validation layers are enabled, then we populate the list with the layer that we want to activate, in this case being Chronos validation. And then we're going to obtain a list of all available layers, and then we're going to use that list to essentially check if indeed the layer that we're activating is supported or not. Okay, makes sense so far? Hopefully that does. And then right down here, I think here, right here, right, debug mode only, we're going to add to this list. Okay, so if we are in debug, in this case, if validation layers are enabled, I want to do an array push. Okay, and to this array of extensions, I want to push the following extension. So I don't know why my dictionary is opened. What is that? Let's see, the following extension, I think it's right here. Wait, no. Let me see, create info. I'm trying to find this real quick. Oh, here it is. Extensions pushback vk debug utils extension names. So that's what I want to activate. So I guess I can get rid of this. Let's see, and let me just navigate to this to see if it is what I'm looking for. Yes, vk extension debug utils, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to enable that layer only in debug mode. Okay, if we build in debug, then that layer gets added to extension list. Okay, and then from there, I guess we can now start setting this part up. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if validation layers are enabled indeed. I'm going to set these properties. Okay, however, if they are not enabled, so I'm going to do else here, I guess. If they're not enabled, we simply just gonna set them to 0 like so. Okay, and then inside this if statement, I'm gonna have another check, which will then check if this layer is indeed in this list of available validation layers. Okay, so where was I? Here. So that's why we're gonna make use of the newly created function called if required validation layers are available. Okay, that's why I named it this way, because it just makes much sense when I read it. So I'm like, if required validation layers are available, then I'm just gonna pass in the required validation layer names, then the list of available validation layers that I want to check against. So in this case, it's going to be available validation layers like so. Okay, so if the layer that we're looking for, or the layer that we're activating, is indeed available in that supported list, then we can just give ourselves a heads up saying that yes, all the required validation layers are available. So we're going to do all required validation layers are present like so. Okay, then what I'm going to do is, instead of setting these guys to 0, we are going to set them to some values. Okay, so the count here is just going to be array get count of required validation layer names. Okay, this required validation layer names is again the list of layers that you want to activate. So we're getting the count of that list. Okay, then the enabled layer names themselves is simply this list. So I'm just gonna copy paste it here like so. Make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So this is an if statement. So we need to do something if this is not true. So if required validation layers are not available, instead, all we want to do is do this that we're doing here and here. But now we also want to do some cleanup stuff, right? But before that, let's just warn, because we don't really want to crash if nothing is available. We want to proceed, but we're not going to proceed having the debugs utility active. So we're just going to disable this, and that will also make sure that the debugger does not get set up. Okay, so then we're just going to warn here and be like, all required validation layers are not present. Okay, therefore disabling validation layers. Okay, and we disable them like so. Okay, let me just put a dot here and close that, and then down here we're just gonna say validation layers enabled. We're just gonna set that to false, because not all layers that we need are actually supported on this machine. So there is no point in having the validation layers enabled, because there's one or two validation layers that are not supported, right? Right, so setting that to false. I don't know why it's crying here. Const bool. Is that a const bool? Yeah. Okay, this shouldn't be const. Yeah, better. All right, so I'm gonna do array destroy, because now we need to free some memory. So remember, up here we're saying if validation layers are enabled, we want to allocate space for the layer names. Okay, so we need to free that space because now we're not going to make use of it, so we might as well just free that space right now. So we're going to free the available layers, and then we also want to free the required validation layers, because, well, there's nothing to do with that anymore, right? We can't do anything with it anymore since we're disabling the validation layers. And then I think we are fine, right? And then everything down here should stay the same. Yeah, everything should stay the same. And then I think down here we can just do the same cleanup that we're doing there, and it should only happen if indeed validation layers are enabled. And if they are, I am just going to copy this and paste it in here, whereby I'm just sort of clean this array and this array, just deallocating all of that memory. And then I think that's it, really. Yeah, I think that's it. So I can save this. Hopefully everything else should run and work. So let me compile a project, and then let me just clear the side and then run our app. And let's see what messages we get. So it's going to say found validation layer, VK layer, Chronos validation. So this layer was indeed found in the available validation layers list. Okay. And then we have another debug message saying all required validation layers are present. Sweet. So what's going to happen if this layer is not supported? So I'm going to put a typo in this and be like, just add an S there at the end to check what happens. So I'm going to recompile. Then I'm going to just close my app, then rerun the app, then see what we get. So here we get a red message, an error message saying required validation layer VK Chronos validations with an S is missing, which indeed should be missing because there is no validation layer called validations. It's called validation. I just made a typo there. So indeed it's checking and it sees that yes, that layer does not exist, and therefore we have another warning message here saying all required validation layers are not present, therefore disabling validation layers. Our app or our engine did not crash. It's still running, okay? But it's running without validation layers enabled, okay? So now it's time to hook up the debug messenger so that we can see those validation messages popping up here if we make any mistakes and so forth, right? So to do that, I guess it's safe for us to just delete this since everything is actually working as expected. To do what I want to do now is I guess I'll have to create two new functions. Well, yeah, two new functions, but I need to do that outside of the renderer. So inside Vulkan, I'm going to create a file called debugger. Okay, Vulkan debugger.h. Then I'm going to do Vulkan debugger.c. And then in my h, I'm just going to do a pragma once. Save this, close this. Then in here in the c, I'm just going to do include Vulkan debugger.h. Save this. Then close that. Then in our Vulkan renderer.c, I'm just going to include it here. So I'm going to do include Vulkan debugger.h. And then I'm just going to clear my console. Then I'm just going to rebuild, make sure everything else still works. And also just run the app, make sure that everything else still works. And yes, we're still getting this error message here, so I'm gonna just fix that typo there before I forget about that. And then yeah, so now we can set up our Vulkan debugger. So how they did it here is we're gonna need this, which is the debug callback, and then we're gonna need to set up our configuration. We already have this in our context, and then we're going to need a function called setup debug messenger, and then it's going to have to check if validation layers are indeed enabled, and then we're going to set up this struct and all of these other stuff going on here. Now I want you guys to pay close attention to what's going on here. These are C way of doing things. C++ ways of doing things. We don't really have auto in C. I think we do now. I'm not quite sure in C23. I'm not really 100% sure, but I'm not going to make use of that. I don't like this keyword. Yeah, I just don't like it because they're using it everywhere, quite frankly, which I just feel like it's really weird. But yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to quickly browse, okay, and see what we will need. So what we're going to do is we're going to abstract all of this, okay? So yes, we're going to have this function setup debugger, but ours is going to be called different. So you're going to call this Vulkan debugger / initialize. Someone commented in one of my previous videos that I misspelled initialize, and I just remembered now that I'm coding this line here. So initialize, and I believe they said it was in the Vulkan, well, I think it was in the renderer. Yes, right here. So you can see I added a T here, so it should be initialized like this, right? Init, yeah, it should be initialized. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go into renderer.c, just remove that T there. It should be initialized like so. Then we're going to come back here, initialize, and then that's perfect. Then we're going to have a shutdown method here, shows shutdown, like so. Yeah, and then that's it, right? So I'm gonna copy this. Actually, before that, what are we going to need? Setup, let me see. yeah, we're gonna need an instance and a debug create info. All right, so I'm just gonna copy this. So we're gonna need that instance, and then we're gonna need the debug ext, which is this, like so. Okay. Debug utils messenger create. Well, not the create info. I think it should just be vk debug utils messenger ext, like so. And then this name matches up with, let's go down to our utils.h, well, not our utils, but our defines. It matches up with this, and in fact, I'm just gonna copy this, and then come back here, make sure that it is the same thing, and it is. And then what we're gonna call this is just the out debug messenger, like so. Okay. Don't know if I want this const, but we'll keep it there for now and see. And then I'm just gonna have this as well when we shut down the debug, and also we need to pass in this guy. So I'm just gonna basically copy this like so, and then instead of out now, it should just be debug messenger, like so. And I think in our defines.h, I want to rename this to be debug messenger with a lowercase letter, like so. That's much better. Sweet. And then I'm just gonna copy this, and I'm gonna go into the .c file, paste this in here, and it's crying, saying that it cannot find vk instance. So what I'm gonna do is just include my vk. I guess we can just say Vulkan defines, and it should find those. And when I save in here, it should be fine. Okay, sweet. So in here, we want to set up our debugger. We want to initialize it. So this function should not be too complicated. Although, if you read here, it might look foreign, right? I mean, you have this auto func, but you don't really know what type it is. That's why I don't like this keyword auto, right? I don't know why the tutorial decided to use these, because I don't like them. But anyway, I'll show you a different way that we're gonna do it and see. So up here, what I want to do is, every time I initialize a system or something, I want to know that that system is being initialized, right? So I'm gonna do an ldebug. Well, I'm gonna log that, but I can't because I need to include my logger. So core logger.h. So I'm gonna do ldebug, right? And then I'm gonna do well, let's say initializing Vulkan debugger. Okay, close it like this. And when we shut down, I also want to know that I'm actually shutting it down. So I'm gonna do shutting down Vulkan debugger. Okay, like so. And then I think that's fine. All right, so let's see what we need here. Yeah, we need this. So what I'm going to do is, let's see. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to do like so. Then I'm just gonna add a 0 in here. Okay, so that is vk debug utils messenger create info. And then instead of calling it create info, just going to call it debug create info, so that I know exactly what is it relating, or what is it related to, right? Yeah. Then I'm going to do debug create info. Then I'm going to do s type. Then I'm going to say this is equals to VK structure type debug utils debug utils or util messenger. Well, yeah, we need an S there. Utils messenger callback or create info. I think it's create info ext. Do they do that? Yeah, they do. I could have just copy pasted it to be quite fair. And then what do they do? Message severity, message type. How do I want to do this? Message severity and message type. Well, this is a whole lot of stuff. I might just put that in its own variable. So let's do debug create info, and then let's do message severity. And then I'm going to set this to its own variable. And I presume that this is a uint. So where is this? Message severity, VK flags. And what is a VK flag? It's a U32. Okay, so it's a U32. So in here I can do a U32. And then I can say message severity. Hopefully that is the same. Severity, yeah. Then all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this, okay, paste it in here. Then I'm just gonna separate it like so. Yeah, I think this is fine. Then I'm just gonna close it here. And then a U32 undefined. I guess we can just do include defines.h, and then that should give us that. And then let's see, what do we have? We have verbose, we have warning, and we have error. So what I actually want is well, I guess we can keep verbose, we can keep warning, we can keep error, but then I want another one here. So VK, let me just copy this because I don't want to retype the whole thing. So I want, instead of warning, I think it's info. So if I save that, yeah, I guess I'm right. So verbose, warning, info, and error. Okay, these are the ones that we want. And then I'm just gonna do message severity like so, and this helps keep this clean so that this is just defined here. Okay, and then what else do I want? Message type. So debug create info message type. What I want to set this to, I guess we could do the same that we're doing up here. Just save this and say, instead of severity, just say message type. And this should change. So instead of severity, this should be type. So let me just put my mouse here, do type, and then let's see, debug utils message type general. So this is where things take a turn, so let's just get rid of that like so. So let's see, so message type, we have general bit, right? Then we have validation bit, then performance bit. So type, let's do general bit, then let's do validation bit. So general, validation, and performance. So let's do validation, performance. Okay, and then I want to add an extra one that they don't have here, and that one is just going to be device addresses binding bit.ext like so. Okay, and then I'm gonna do message type like so. Clean, right? Then we're gonna do pfn user callback. this will be our callback function. So let's do debug create info dot pfn user callback, and then this should point to a callback function, and I think they defined it up here. So this is what that is referring to. So we probably also want to define that. So up here we can do a static internal function. So let's do static. I'm gonna copy. Do I copy the whole thing? Let's see. So let's copy the whole thing and then just modify it where it needs to be. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna have static vk bool32 vk API. I'm gonna rename this function name to be a lowercase version of that, to match my naming style. And then I think the rest should be fine. We have dk utils messenger flag spit. That should just be message severity with a lowercase, and then message type with a lowercase, and then callback ext. This should just be pointer callback data. Pointer callback data. I don't like this name, so just gonna get rid of the p. I'm just gonna say callback data, like so. Okay, then here pf user data, I'm just gonna say user data. Okay, and then in here just close this. And this actually we're not going to define it up here because I don't know how long it will be, so I'm just going to define forward declare the function up here, but actually copy paste this and we're going to define it down here, and then this is where we'll fill it out. So I'm going to leave that there for now, and then this variable will be equals to this function right here. So I'm just going to paste that function name here and close that, and then that's about it, right? Then what do we need? We need, let's come back here, the user data. So we don't have user data either, so I'm gonna set that to null as well. Yeah, I'm gonna set that to null as well. So debug callback dot debug create info dot user data, and I'm just gonna set that to null like so. Okay, and I think that's it, right, for this struct. Then down here what I'm gonna do is, instead of using, well, let me show you, they're using auto, right? So instead of using auto, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say pfn because I know what it is. So I'm gonna say pfn create I think debug utils messenger ext. Yeah, that's right here. Okay, then func. Okay, so what I'm doing is essentially replacing the auto keyword with what it really is, which is this. Okay, then func, then we say is equals to that. Okay, cool. So then we're gonna do func is equals to pfn vk create debug, which is essentially this. Okay, then let's see, vk instance proc address. Yeah, so I probably just want to copy that also. So let's do this. vk get instance proc address instance. So we're gonna pass in the instance along with the vk create debug. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And our instance is coming from here, and in fact this should have been a pointer. So let's go back to the debug header file, turn this into a pointer. Sorry about that. Then just save this, and that should be fine. And then since now a pointer, I need to dereference it using a star, and then create a new line there. Okay, then what I'm going to do is they are checking if it's not equals to null. So for me, I'll just include something here called assert.h, and to do the same thing, I'm simply just going to say assert func. Okay, and that should just take care of this whole thing here. And then once it passes the assertion, we can simply just be like, we can just call it, right? And when we call it, we need to pass in the instance, right? Passing in the instance, then the create info and the allocator. So ours is called debug create info, and then the allocator is null. We don't have one. And then the messenger. So this is passed through here. So it's going to be our out debug messenger. So out debug messenger, like so. And then finally you can just log and be like, oh, it's crying. So why is it crying? Why are you crying? Oh, let me see if that, well, interesting. I'm just gonna leave it like this and see if it gives us any issues. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. Let's see. Ldebug. Okay, here's what so Ldebug, what I want to print out here, because we know at the end we can just say Vulkan debugger, right? Vulkan debugger created or initialized. Okay, like so. Then do we return anything? No, we don't. So I'm still bugged out about this. So let's just see what will happen. Okay, I'll just say this. Vulkan debug initialized. So yeah, let's see if it will initialize that indeed. So let's go to the renderer, the Vulkan renderer, and I'm just gonna temporarily place it right after we create our instance. And I'm gonna do if validation layer is enabled. Only want to call it when we have that enabled. So I'm gonna say Vulkan debugger initialize, like so, and then I'm gonna pass in the context slash instance, and then I'm going to pass in the context slash debug messenger, like so, and then these should be the addresses of those. So place it like this. So then we're gonna save, and I'm just gonna save everything. Oh, so everything is saved. Then I'm gonna make, right, rebuild our project, see if we have any issues, and we do. Oh, I renamed this, but then I didn't change where I'm calling it, so I just changed and fixed that typo, and then rebuild the project again. And then we still have two warnings. One is in here. So what am I doing wrong? Function func instance create info, p allocator const debug messenger p create info, p debug messenger. Oh, so maybe get rid of this, and let's get rid of this const. Oh yeah, actually we should get rid of the const because it's modifying it, right? Yeah, it's modifying it, and then I think we can get rid of it there as well, because yeah, so get rid of the const keyword. Shouldn't be there. Yeah, and then I think this should actually fix our issue. So let's make one warning. So let's see, where is this happening? Oh, we're not returning anything, so I'm just gonna return true. I don't know, but yeah, Let's see if we have any issues. No, we don't. So clear our console, rebuild it again, no issues. So let's clear this side and let's run the app. So /app, and let's see if we have any issues. So what we have, so we have initializing Vulkan debugger and then Vulkan debugger initialized. So that is working because we finally reached the end, meaning that it passed the assertion, then it called itself, and then it called it the debug message. It logged the debug message, right? But however, if I close my app, right, you'll notice that we don't have any feedback if we made anything wrong. And I do know that I'm making something wrong because I'm not deallocating any memory for my instance. I'm not removing it when we basically shut down the engine or the renderer. So back into I think the renderer or the renderer.h. So in renderer.h we have renderer initialize, renderer shut down, and then in renderer.c we have renderer initialize, and then we have renderer shut down. So we need a function to essentially call Vulkan shutdown. So in Vulkan renderer.h, right here, what we want to do is say void Vulkan shut down, like so, and then this, well, yeah, it's fine. So then in our Vulkan renderer.c down here, we can just open this, right? And what we want to do is, before anything, let's just go back into the renderer.c and just call it here. So Vulkan shutdown, like so. Then back in renderer.c, here we want to destroy our instance. Okay, so to destroy our instance, I don't know if I remember, but vk should just be vk destroy instance, I think. Then I have to pass in the instance that I want to destroy, so that is stored in our context. So let me do instance, and then the allocator is null because we don't have one. And then when I shut down, it should basically destroy the instance. However, in our main.c, I don't think we're calling renderer shutdown, so maybe I'm just gonna put it here. I'm gonna do renderer shutdown, like so, right before we shut down the platform. And then I'm gonna rebuild our project and see if we made any mistakes. Clear our console on this side, run the app again. Notice again, we're not really getting anything from the debugger. So now when I try and close it, we should get something from the debugger, right? And no, I don't. Man, okay. Let's see. Render shutdown. Let's see. Shutdown, Vulkan shutdown. Well, that's very interesting. It's not doing anything. Yeah, I don't really like working with a debugger because I don't know what I need to do to trigger it though. We created it, yes, but I don't know what to do to trigger it. Because I know it should be triggered because I'm trying to release the instance before releasing the debugger. So it should have essentially called itself, but it didn't. So let me just debug and see if indeed I'm making something or I'm not doing the right thing or anything like that. So oh, you know why this is not working? We're not done. We are not done. We still have this guy to set up, right? Yes, it's just returning true, but it's not printing out anything. Okay, so the debug callback is being called, but we're not doing anything. So we need to do something, and luckily it's pretty simple. We just need to print out stuff. So what we're going to do is we're just going to check through the message severity to check, is it verbose, is it an error, is it a warning, is it an info, and then just print out whatever it is that we want to print out. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a switch. It's very simple, and I'm just going to pass in the message severity here. And if you're not sure what the flags are, you basically just activated them here, so you can just take the ones that you already support. So in my scenario, I'm just gonna start with the last one, which is error here. So I'm gonna do case error, then I just want to log an error message, right? And then the error message in our case will just be string s, and then that should just be the message. So it's just going to be callback data, right? And then inside here we have what we call a p message. So p message, that will be the message being printed out. Okay, and then that's it, right? You just repeat this thing for all the other cases that you have. So I'm just gonna copy this, paste, paste, paste. I think I have 4 cases, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So we're gonna have error, and then the other one is gonna be warning. So then the logger will just log a warn message. Okay, then we're gonna have one for info. So info bit, this one should just be L info. Okay, then the other one is just verbose. So verbose, like so. And for verbose, we don't really have anything, so I think we can just do trace for this. Okay, I guess, right? Then it's just verbose, like extra stuff that we don't really need to really know about, but then at least it will be gray colored. So yeah, I hope so. But anyway, and I think this is it. This is all you have to actually do. And then for the default, in case we're not handling anything, I guess we can just do an L trace as well, or an L. I don't know. Let's just do debug. Right? Let's do trace. Then I know it's from Vulkan. Yeah, it's fine. Let's do trace. Okay. Then after that we return true. We don't return true. Actually, we're supposed to return false. That's just based on the spec or whatever they wanted us to do. Because why does this keep on closing? But we should return false, I believe. So where is it? I'm not sure if they implemented it as well. Yeah, right here. So they're returning VK false. So we should also return VK false. And that's about it, right? So yeah. So let me save that. And then I rebuild my project, and then clear this side. Then we run the app, and then you'll notice that we're still not getting anything from the debugger, but I should see something now. And yes, I do. So because I closed the application, I only deleted the instance, right? So then we have this message here. So let me just make it a little bit longer. So we're gonna say validation error, right? And then it's going to give me of type instance, and it's going to type debug utils messenger, and it's going to say message id vk destroy instance, and then for vk instance, vk debugger has not been destroyed. So it's telling me what I haven't done. So I need to then destroy the debugger as well, right? Has not been destroyed. And then it says the Vulkan spec states that all child objects created using instance must have been destroyed prior to destroying the instance. So all that simply means is back in our Vulkan.renderer, all I need to do is destroy the debugger. So I'm going to do again if validation layers are enabled, then we're just going to say Vulkan debugger shutdown. And what it wants is, let me see again, it wants an instance. So let's do context instance. Then it also wants the debugger, so constant context debugger, like so. And we should pass in the address like that. Sweet. So if I save that and I bolt now, so make, and I just wait, what? Yeah, and I just clear this, and then I run the app, and I close now. We shouldn't, well, we're still getting the error message. What am I doing wrong? Oh, I know why. Because we haven't filled out this function yet. Yes, it says shutting down Vulkan debugger, but we're really not doing anything. So what we want to do is this. So I'm just gonna, actually they do have it here. Setup debugger. destroying. Here it is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this because there's nothing really special about it. Where is it? Down here. Paste it in here, and the only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna replace the auto with this. Okay, so it's gonna be vk destroy debug utils messenger ext. Okay, func. Then it's gonna do this. Then we're gonna pass in the instance, and because our instance here's a pointer, we're just gonna dereference it like this. And then notice that this is different from this. Okay, this says destroy, this says create. Okay, destroy, this one says create. All right, so they're not the same func calls. All right, and then once you have that, all I'm gonna then do is essentially just call this guy. So I'm gonna get rid of this and this, and debug messenger should just be debug messenger, and then the allocator should be 0, and then these guys should be the addresses. No, it should be dereferenced like so. And then I think with that now being set and done, we can just take this message and actually put it at the end, and then instead of shutting down, we can just say Vulkan debugger destroyed, or shut down successfully, like so. And I think now when I build again, this time around it should indeed work. Okay, so let's just clear this side and then run the app, and when I close this, it should not give me any issues. Okay, and to test if this works only in debug mode, I think I have to come back here because I'm only calling it to call itself when we are in debug mode. So if I turn this to false, right, if I turn that to false, and then in my destroy I just somewhat forget to destroy it, then we shouldn't see that message saying, hey, you forgot to destroy this. That's because now we disabled validation layers, so we shouldn't be able to get those messages, those warning messages or anything like that. So if I run this again and then I close this bad boy, you notice that we don't get those messages, right? That's because I disabled validation layers, but our application still runs. But then if I re-enable them, so it's true now, and then I rebuild, okay, and then I rerun the app, when I close this, we should get those error messages, and we do. Okay, and also what I want to test is if I include the debug in my build defined, to see if that also works. So I'm going to remove the debug, then I'm going to save my makefile, then I'm going to rebuild my project. Okay, then in here I'm going to rerun the app, and because I removed the debug flag, validation layers are indeed disabled, so therefore if I close this, we shouldn't see them. You see, it's just that you're getting distracted by the one above. So let me just clear that and then just rerun this again so that you can see that in action. So if I close this, we shouldn't see any debug messages. However, if I put back the debug defines there, and I save my makefile, then I rebuild, and then I rerun the app, and then this time around I close, you'll notice that we get the error messages, and we also get the fact that it's initializing the debugger, and it's also checking for validation layer support. Whereas if we didn't have that, you'd notice that it only initializes the input system and the event system, but it doesn't initialize the debugger and so forth. So that's how it works. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We've successfully set up our validation layers. We are getting validation messages in the console, so that is pretty sweet. So in the next video, I believe we'll be doing physical devices and the queue families. Yeah, so we'll be doing physical devices. So we'll be picking up the devices, and then from there I think it will be logical devices, and then finally presentation. which I think I'll have to take a detour when I get here. I don't know, we'll see. Okay, to maybe work on our platform layer a little bit, but I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed today's video, I know it's a long one, but yeah, if you did, definitely hit that like, subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers.